Welcome into another episode of Betting the Pitch. I'm your host, the real underscore G Warner. It is Thursday, July 6th. Plenty of Wimbledon going on. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about the knockout rounds of the Gold Cup because we are starved for some sort of competitive men's soccer this summer. Not really the greatest competition out there, but there's money to be made. So I'll be going through each of the days of the knockout rounds as we consolidate from, I think, 8 teams to a semifinal. The U.S. are involved, Mexico's involved, Canada's involved, a lot of those things. I'll give you an idea of kind of how this tournament has gone, really the expectations for each of the teams coming into it. And then, of course, we'll come out with ultimate best bets end of show. I do have a pregame.com promo code. I want to also mention my Patreon, patreon.com/thereal_G Warner. It's a good spot to get all of my leans, thoughts, plays locked in as I do them. So I strongly suggest you checking that out. And it's a little bit more affordable than what I do on pregame. I know that's been mentioned as important to some of you. So check it out, patreon.com/thereal_G Warner. But of course, I'll be giving a discount code for pregame, which might work for a lot of you looking for some football stuff coming up really shortly. Other than that, I guess I'll jump right into it. All lines quoted in this podcast are courtesy of betonline.ag, my favorite place to get my bets down early. Reduced use is offered on almost every game you want to bet right up until game time. Please follow the link found in the podcast description to fund your account and use the promo code GW50 to receive 50% match bonus up to $1,000. So now that we have a little more money in our accounts, once you use that promo code, let's jump in. The first match we have on Saturday is Panama against Qatar. It is I am giving home field advantage to both Mexico and the United States for this tournament. Just a quarter what I do for most teams. It might be a little bit aggressive, but I feel like it's fair based on how well Mexicans really show up and the Mexican fan base really shows up for this tournament. Nothing to really speak of for Panama, Qatar. I do expect more Panamanians in the stadium, but I don't think it's going to be a significant difference. Current number is Panama a 3/4 goal favorite with all the juice. The over-under is 2.25, and it's split juice both ways. Not expecting a lot of goals in this matchup, but Panama and I guess Panama's getting a lot more respect and is a lot more likely to get through. And I think that the performances so far in this tournament have supported that. I think Panama looked like a team that I thought were pretty impressive in the CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. They've been good in this tournament as well. Started off as a favorite against Costa Rica, who was really their equal in their group, which didn't seem that way for a while. But Panama have looked good in this tournament. I feel like they have done everything they could. They clinched their advancement into this stage after only 2 matches. So their last match didn't really matter. Still gave it a go. Seemed like they got out of it without missing any key players. So that's really important. And now we're a 3/4 goal favorite, which is pretty expensive, especially as it looks like it's going to climb to a full goal before kickoff on Saturday evening here in the United States. Qatar, on the other hand, it's weird that they're in this tournament. They got into it because they played in the Gold Cup the last time, I think, as a prep to get some competitive matches under their belts before the World Cup. They looked pretty good in the Gold Cup last time. Were awful in the World Cup, like embarrassingly bad, like made me question how FIFA would let a really poor footballing nation buy a World Cup. But I guess those things have probably already been decided in the judicial systems in Switzerland or wherever the heck that stuff goes down. But then Qatar, they snuck into this knockout round. Certainly their play has not deserved it. They took a shock lead after giving Mexico, who had pretty much already clinched and weren't playing their best players, gave Mexico 70% of the ball or so when Qatar needed a win. Carlos Queiroz, former manager of like many, many different countries, I think most recently Iran at the World Cup, somehow navigated his way. They stole a goal on a cross from the side or from the wing, and then basically held on for dear life, trying to put 11 men in their box. I don't think it's going to be the same type of strategy here against Panama because they see themselves as more of an equal, though they needed to win that last match. We're playing so conservatively. I expect it probably is going to go the same way in this one. That does give me some interest in that under 2.25. I think more so than backing a Qatari side that really have not looked good at all. And of course, I feel the pain like I'm going to sneeze soon. So, of course, can't do it. Can't do an episode without sneezes or yawns, unfortunately. But anyway, for my best bet for this episode, I'm going to go, or for this matchup, I think Qatar under 2.25 is the best one out there. Ultimately, the side is not really something I'm interested in. Even if Qatar get to +1, I do think that's a reasonable shout, and it's something that might be interested in looking into. I think Panama have been playing a lot better, though, and I think there's a lot more safety clearly in under 2.25 goals if Qatar do not score versus the only single goal that they'd be getting. Now to the nightcap and the bigger matchup on Saturday, at least for ratings reasons in the United States and probably whoever's watching the Gold Cup globally. Mexico are going to face Costa Rica. I don't exactly know where this is located. I could find that pretty easily, but ultimately, as I said, I've been giving Mexico home court or home field advantage this entire tournament. Currently, Mexico are 1.25 goal favorite with all the juice right now. Over under is 2.75 juice the over. So Mexico came into this tournament with an interim manager really needing to figure out how to play football again at the levels that they would expect. Crashed out of the World Cup. Manager didn't make it with the job after he got off the flight. I think was fired mid-air, but knew he was done anyway. And then the new manager came in and Coco was so poor, got blasted by the United States, barely, controlled the possession, but did nothing offensively in their next match. It was a very easy under in the third place matchup in the CONCACAF Nations League. There's so many events going on this summer. Now they brought a pretty full, so not their best, but ultimately it seemed like almost the best players that Mexico could bring, trying to kind of restore some confidence and really start over and really get some much needed wins under their belt. And it's worked in this tournament so far. The loss to Qatar wasn't really a huge demerit because they didn't play their best players, but here we are now, and they're facing a Costa Rican side that honestly was jockeying back and forth. Probably the most interesting of all the simultaneous kickoffs were the Costa Ricans and the various El Salvadorians and all of them trying to figure out a way who's going to get the second spot behind Panama. What ended up having, Costa Rica got a big win, took a 6-1 lead, I think it was, and then only ended up winning 6-4 against Martinique, who were fighting like heck to try to move on. I'm not sure that there's a ton of hangover or anything affecting from that matchup, as pretty much everything that's happened before now has been forgotten. All that really mattered was getting through and then what place you got to see if you could avoid the 1 seed in another group. Well, Costa Rica gets the 1 seed Mexico from the other group, and this is going to be a tough matchup for them. The Costa Ricans were underdogs to Panama, which is a bit of a surprise because I feel like they've been favored against Panama for a very long time. But Costa Rica has gotten very old. A lot of their players have left the team. They still have some names that you know from a long time ago. But ultimately, they're not very strong, and they're not really a goal-scoring side and never really have been. Keylor Navas is not there to bail you out the goalkeeping position. Brian Ruiz, I think, is finally retired. I think he was pushing 40. And unfortunately, Costa Rica is going to go in there knowing that they're a huge disadvantage because they're not as talented. They never were as Mexico. And then the Mexicans brought one of their best teams to rosters they could, because they're trying to restore some glory to an El Tri nation side federation that have been a laughingstock for a while. So Costa Ricans are 1.25 goal underdogs. They're not going to really have much offensively, I don't suspect. I imagine Mexico will be a lot more capable at defending set pieces than Martinique were, and I think that's going to really drive down the ability for Costa Rica to score here. Now, Mexico on the other side have not been able to score goals for a long time. I'm not sure that 2 matches in the Gold Cup against like Honduras, who's been one of the worst defenses in history over the past few years, maybe not history might be extreme, but they've been awful. I think finished bottom of the CONCACAF octagonal, despite being one of the better rated sides in there. Mexico, I'm just not a believer. And then crushing Haiti. I'm sorry, the Haitians are not a nation that we're even in the octagonal. So I do think Mexico, I still don't believe in them to score. I think you can honestly feel their crowd get really, really upset every second they're not taking the lead or dominating their opponent. And I think that plays into the stress and pressure on the Mexicans that are out there on the on the pitch trying to score goals. And so my biggest interest in this one is the Costa Ricans, but it's not necessarily the side. I think it's again to an under, where I like under 2.75. So a little bit more juice to the over right now. And certainly there's a key number there. If you can get 3, that would be much more interesting. So I'm going to do my best to hold out and see if we get a 3 before this kicks off. Certainly marketplaces and public money and late money seems to always run all the way on favorites and overs, specifically overs, I think way more so than favorites. So I'm going to hold out hope that we get a 3, because that push would be important, maybe not essential, but I think it's very likely this is a low scoring matchup. So I'm very interested in the Saturday nightcap, and really for both matches on Saturday to see unders. I think more so the Costa Ricans, just because it's a higher number. And I think therefore I'll make that my selection for Saturday for the ultimate best bet. I'll go Costa Rica under 2.75. I do like both unders in both of those matches. Now we'll move to Sunday. And we have Guatemala against Jamaica. Guatemala, a 3/4 goal underdog right now, with a little bit more of the juice. Over under is 2.25, juiced heavily to the under. Guatemala, they had a really, really good crowd support. I'm not sure that they will in this matchup. The Jamaicans didn't really have a ton, but they have the support of a ton of English Premier League players that did not make the English national side and finally gave up and switched their allegiances and to a nation that they could play for based on spots, really. But it's gone great for Jamaica so far. We're a better team against the U.S., of course. Then won their next matchup, I think pretty handily against Trinidad and Tobago. And then we're not clinched, but did what they needed to do to get through against a really poor St. Kitts side. The gulf in quality from some of these teams in this competition have been incredible. But anyway, Guatemala, to me, were not a great offense or one that I was really proud of or trusted. And now they're a pretty big underdog against the Jamaican side that definitely have the talent and look like they've had a lot more of the shape that you would, I think, was lacking for Jamaica for a long time. Their defense had been a big staying power for them. Then they added all these Premier League players, and the defense kind of went out the window, and they weren't scoring enough. This tournament has changed that a little bit. I think against weaker competition has helped. But from where I sit with Jamaica, I think they're a dark horse to win this event. I think Guatemala could certainly knock them out, because it seems like in knockout stages, like teams even like Brazil will lose. But I think Guatemala at 3/4 goal is really not enough for me right now. It doesn't look like it's going to climb to a full goal of insurance. So I think my only interest really here is under 2.25. But even then, I think Jamaica have shown in this tournament, Demarai Gray has been so good. Mikel Antonio is going to be a bull in a China shop, a bull in a Guatemalan China shop. And it's going to be really hard for them to stop him from getting where he wants. So I don't really know what there's a lot for me to do in this one. I guess under 2.25 would be my biggest interest, but that's really not super strong for me right now. So I think might be one of those where I don't really have anything to advocate, and we'll move to the US and Canada. So this is the nightcap on Sunday. Canada with, not bringing their best side here. USA neither, but Canada's a lot thinner on depth. So the US are kind of starting what seemed like a team that they were trying to qualify before they ended up getting a few huge defections, like the Jorginho Desks of the world, to come and pledge to play for the United States, Yunus Musa as well as others. Canada's manager saying this is exactly what they wanted. I mean, just really, I think, trying to pump up his side, but I'm sure that's been playing on repeat in the locker room in the US as they prepare for this. And let's not forget that the US and Canada just played with different rosters, but in the CONCACAF Nations League final, and Canada were crying under the bed, afraid of monsters, basically. And it was a much more talented US side. These teams are probably more similar or more equal in terms of talent. But that was not a good showing for Canada after an awful World Cup where they were really embarrassed, trying to play as aggressively as possible. They then tried to play a little bit. I mean, I think Herman, their manager, has kind of transitioned them from a defensive only, trying to keep goals out of the back of their net, try to make them into a team that can make the World Cup, to then playing the World Cup as offensively freely as they could. And then really they learned that they are not in the right place to do that. They didn't have the quality to do that on a World Cup level. I don't think they have the quality to do that against the US. But again, I'm kind of concerned about what the Canadians are going to offer. Current numbers 3.25 with more juice on the US. Maybe this climbs to 1 before it kicks off. I think that's a minimum for me to want to back Canada. In terms of the over under, I'm not necessarily, I mean, Jesus Ferreira has been awesome, but we've seen his problems in CONCACAF qualifying and literally how he lost his striker position to Ricardo Pepi and now to Florian Balogun. And I mean, certainly his 2 hat tricks in a row has been impressive, but they've been against really, really poor competition. I think from where I'm looking in this one, I'm not really interested in Canada. I don't know necessarily that they're going to return to the defensive ways, but I do think that's the best way for them to try to get a result here and try to move through, because they, even against a depleted U.S. competition, which like their B side, I think they still need to realize that they're not as strong and they need to play defensively. So under 2.5 will be my pick for that one. And then I'll go through and summarize with an ultimate bet, assuming I don't just knock everything off my laptop, right? Or desk table, whatever we're calling this at this point. So before I get to the ultimate best bet, though, let's go through and save you some additional money. So if you're on pregame.com, if you don't have an account there yet, sign up. You get free $25 for all new accounts. You can use that. Get anyone's, I think, best bet for a day. Also, if you are trying to purchase more picks, like if you're looking for, I do have a college football pick out there. Of course, I'm doing baseball daily. Also check out the pregame.com promo, the podcast, so many P's. The baseball podcast I do with Scott Seidenberg. But to use the promo code champions20, get 20% off for all listeners of the soccer podcast. Good for 7 days from podcast release. I've actually hit 5 straight baseball plays, including a best bet yesterday, or 3-star, as they call it over there. So check that out. Get 20% off. You can certainly buy a season-long package. I have a college football and NFL mixture. I have plenty of other things coming out. I want to get on the guys to get me a full all access so I can include soccer stuff as well. But use the promo code champions20, good for 20% off anything on the pregame.com website. And you can, I'll get some credit. They'll like me a little bit more, I think. I don't think I get anything financially from it, but they'll at least want to keep doing this podcast a little bit longer if you guys support over there. So champions20, use that. Also mentioned my patreon.com / the real_G Warner earlier. Make sure you check that out. If you're looking, that's another place to get all my nightly information. Really, I'm putting out all my leans overnight and then trying to consolidate those and come up with write-ups before you'll see them on Twitter and things of that nature. So check that out, patreon.com / the real_G Warner. And I guess it's probably time to get in. I don't think there's anything more that I need to cover. So let's do it. So this is Betting the Pitch number 209 with the real_G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you can find me. For my ultimate best bet on Saturday, I like Costa Rica under 2 3/4 for the Gold Cup. And then on Sunday, I like Canada under 2.5. But for my ultimate best bet on this episode, I'm going to go with Costa Rica under 2 3/4. You might get 3 before this kicks off. I'll wait for that one to see what happens. I just don't believe that the Mexican national team can score goals efficiently. It's been a big problem for them for years. I don't think 2 good matches in the first 2 of a Gold Cup against really poor competition has really done enough to change my opinion. And I think Costa Rica knows that they are not the same type of talent level that they were in the past. So they're going to go in and try to defend as much as they can. I think it's going to be really hard to see 3 goals scored here. So try to hold out if you can grab an under 3 before this kicks off. But that'll be my ultimate best bet for this episode, Betting the Pitch number 209. That's Costa Rica under 2 3/4 goals on Saturday evening. And then I'll do it for this episode of Betting the Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. As always, thanks for the support. We'll be working through some future stuff with the big European leagues. Don't really have a lot out there right now, but that'll be kind of, I think I'll be doing Gold Cup for a little while longer because that's a real competition that's happening. And then as the other numbers start coming out, I've been working on tracking transfers and trying to come up with some strategies on who to look for, like fading Brighton seems like a really good idea at this point. But anyway, stay tuned. Thanks for all the support. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It'd be really huge to get me up the search rankings. If you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe. And of course, if you want to interact with me anywhere, patreon.com / the real_G Warner, twitter.com / the real_G Warner, or Instagram, anywhere you can find it. Awful handle, I know, but we're working through it. And at this point, we're not changing it. So the real_G Warner, wherever you get your podcasts or tweets or information, hit me up there. I probably have an account and we can chat if you got something that you want to talk about. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.